So today is lesson 6. We've had a look at a few portfolios. I will get those marked before next week's class. So today we're going to do a little review exercise working with MVC structure in Node. We're going to add some things to our little project management website. You guys will kind of do that in small groups. And then what we want to do is we're going to add some additional functionality. We want to look at how do we fill a dropdown dynamically using Node, Express, MongoDB with Mongoose. And then we also want to add edit and delete functionality. So right now we can create and we can read data, but we have no ability to edit or delete. So we want to kind of get all that working today. So I'm going to open up my code editor. And I will use NodeMon to get our app running again. It's been a week, so it's a good idea for us to have a quick look at it so we can remember how we left off. So when we start it up, we get a connected to MongoDB message. And at localhost 3000, we added a Bootstrap theme. So last week, we built our project's index as well as our add form. So we could go ahead and add a project. We wrote the code to use our model and code in our controller so that we could save to the database and then this list would get refreshed. So one of the things we want to change about this is we want to change our courses rather than just being a free text field. We want this to be a drop-down list. Now, right now, we don't have the courses stored at all in our database. So we need to create a model, a controller, and a couple of views so that we can add new courses. And once we do that, then we're going to convert this text input to a drop-down list. And we'll use a query so that we can fetch the list of courses from the database and populate this drop-down. And then we're adding a project. We can just choose a course rather than having to type in the course code. So to do this, I'm going to stop the recording in a minute. I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and I'm going to put you in rooms of 3. Now, I think there are, let me just see how many people are here right now. Okay, well, there's 12, including me. So one breakout room will have just 2 students. Okay, so I'm going to put you in teams of 3. Each person is going to you're going to decide amongst yourselves who's going to build the course model, who's going to build the view to create a new course, and who's going to build the course's controller. So you're going to need to add a model, a controller, and one view. And the course will have a code property. It won't be a course name, it'll be a course code. And then in your nav bar, we should have a courses link. So you're going to need to create an index and an add method in your new controller, as well as an index and an add view. So you're going to work together as a team to make a course's model, controller, and 2 views, index and add. So when you're all done, you should have the ability to add and list the courses in the project. Actually, you know what? You don't need an index view. We'll just have this say add a course. We don't need a list. So this link will just go directly to our ad. So you only need one new view. So you're going to work on this together. I'll give you some time to do it. And then we'll put this all back together and review a solution, maybe about a half an hour or so, 20 minutes, half an hour. And you're free to ask for help as we go as well. Okay, are there any questions before I start the breakout rooms? All the instructions are on Blackboard, and you can ask for help when you need it. Okay, I'm going to end the breakout sessions. Resume recording. So I've set up some empty files. I've got my course model here. Maybe I could ask somebody who was one of the model developers if you want to maybe put your model code in the chat, and I will add it to my course.js. So I've created under models, I've created course.js. Maybe I could ask someone to share their code. So you can just throw it in the chat and I will add it to my course.js. That's okay, Hung. We're gonna put this all together. So we're gonna start with the model. Thank you, Justin. That's great. So we're gonna require Mongoose, and we're creating a new schema. So we've got both a name and a course code. That's fine. You could also have only done a course code. I'm gonna just remove this comma on line 12. We don't need it. And we're gonna export it as course. Once we put this all together, I'll also upload to GitHub. And maybe I'll convert this to const, but that's great. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to create the view. So under the views folder, I've created a courses folder. So similar structure to, I think Ivan, we had this conversation and Hung, so, you know, in ASP.NET, every time we made a new controller, we automatically got a subfolder of views with the same name. And we kind of use the same pattern when we're working with Node. And this is so that we can, for example, reuse our view names, but each one is in a unique subfolder. So I've got my courses add view. Could I ask maybe one of the view developers, maybe you could share your code that you included in your courses add.hbs. So just throw it in the chat and we will add it. I could ask someone to share their view, their HTML, that'd be great. Thank you, Maggie. Well, okay, so you just had course code, which is fine. So maybe what I'll do, I don't really need the course name. I'll just maybe take that out. I'm only going to have a course code property in my model. That was all I asked you to do. It's fine if you have a name. If you have a name in the model, you'll probably want to add an input for the name here. Yeah, this looks good. Okay, and then what about the code that goes in our courses controller? So inside of controllers, I've made a new file that's plural with an S, courses.js. Maybe I could ask somebody to share what your controller looks like. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Hung. That's great. Okay, so we've got our references to Express and to the course model. Now, in this case, we don't really need, and Hung, I fully understand. So this is great. I'm not going to use the get method right now because we don't have, I didn't require you to do this part. It's not wrong. But we also will need get and post methods for adding a course. So the method you put in there, it's good. We're not going to use that method. We just really need the add method. So maybe I could ask somebody who had a chance to write the add methods, the get and post methods for their courses controller. Maybe they could share that with us, please. So we do want it to be public. We do need all these references, but we also need the get and post handlers at courses/add. Is there anybody who has those methods? Okay, that's great. Thanks, Maggie. So yeah, I'll start from, I'll take the get. So here's our, whoops, that's our getting all. Okay. I think I got the right one. So get rid of this duplicate stuff. Okay, so this is our index. Yeah, we don't need this one. We need the get add method. So, okay, so this is good. Request.body. So this would have to be, if in my view, my input's called course code. So in here, I've also got to use course code. And I think we'll just redirect right back to the root because we don't have a courses index. So after we create a new course, we'll just redirect. But we also need the get handler that will load our form. So there's our post handler. But we're also going to need our get at courses/add. So when we have a get request, we'll use our usual express parameters. And we'll just call res.render courses/add. And our title will be add a course. So when we get a request at courses/add, it should load our new view. And when we have a post request, it should create a new course and redirect the user back to the home page. So I'm going to try this out, save my changes. And now I'm going to try /courses/add, and we get not found. That's right. So we have to add the mapping that any requests to start with the URL /courses, we have to tell app.js to direct those to the courses controller. So in my app.js, we're going to declare our courses controller. So we declared our projects controller last week. Now we're going to declare our courses controller. And then we're going to map any URLs that start with the path courses to our controller. So I've added line 10 and I've added line 27. I will upload all this code to GitHub in a moment. So now I'm going to try this again. And now it loads our form. So I can put in a course code, COMP2106. Just takes me back to the home page. That's okay. And Barak, maybe I can ask you to share, what can we do in our, how do we get this link in our nav bar? Because I know you were talking about in the breakout session.
We can add it from the
link. What should I do?
layout.hbs.
Okay, yep. So we'll go to views and we'll go to our layout HBS. Yep.
And then we can add it in there.
Okay, so we'll just add a link. I'll just copy the project's link. Add course. And what should this URL be? What should the href be?
Courses/add.
You got it. So it'll go to our courses controller and it'll call the add method that will run the get request, which will load the form. So we've got a new link in our nav bar. So now I can add a course. Okay. What's another, we can add a couple more. What's another, some of your other course codes for this semester? Besides the two courses most of us have together. So I'll add COMP2109. Okay, thanks, Maggie. And all right, so I've added 4 courses now. I'll push everything up to GitHub. So I've uploaded this stuff. I'll just relaunch the server. If I want to check in the database, I can connect through Compass. And I can look and make sure that there is actually a courses collection and that data is getting saved in there. So here's my connection from last week. I'll just click on it and click connect. And if I go into my COMP2106, we can now see there are two collections here. And here's our courses collection with our 4 course codes. Now you may notice something really neat. As soon as I started saving courses, MongoDB automatically made this collection for me. So we don't even have to create a collection before we can save documents to it. And most SQL databases are like this. Remember, they're schemaless. So if we save something from a course model and there is no course collection, MongoDB will just create it on the fly before it creates the first document, which is kind of neat. In a relational database, if we tried to save something to a table and that table didn't already exist, we'd get an error. But in a NoSQL database, this process works just fine. Okay, so now we can manage the courses. So I want to go back here to our projects add, and I want to replace this text box with a select box. So not only are we going to have to convert this to a HTML select tag, but also in our projects controller, what will we have to do in here when we have a get request at project/add? We're going to have to make some changes in here. We'll have to change the view. So this input tag is going to be a select tag. What will we need to do in here in order to display a drop-down list with all the courses? How are we going to do that? Yeah, well, we're calling the add view already. So this is going to be a drop-down with all of the course codes, right? So we're going to need, before we render the view, we're going to need to use our course model to fetch the list of courses, and then we need to pass them along with the page title. Just like in our index view, we ran a query to get all the project documents from the project collection, and then we passed in res.render, when we called the view, we passed it a title, and we also handed it the data that was going to be displayed on the index view. So we have to do something similar here. So let's open up our projects controller. So under controllers projects. Now we're going to need to reference our course model because we want to query the courses collection. So we'll create a constant called course. So this controller is not only needs to be able to query the projects collection using the project model, we also need to be able to query the courses collection using our course model. So we'll add this reference on line 7. So add your reference at the class level. So we're going to use the course model to get a list of all our courses so that we can populate our drop-down list. So we'll call course.find. And this runs a callback, and it will return either an error or a list of courses. Ignore anything that's highlighted in gray here. That's just my WebStorm code prompts. I'll put the code in the chat in a minute if you need it. So if we get an error, we'll just log it. Otherwise, if we get no error, we get back courses, we're going to move our res.render in here. So we try to look up the courses. If an error happens, print it to the console. If no error happens, load the project add view. But now we're going to add something here. Not only do we need to pass it the title, but our view needs this courses variable. It needs the list of courses so that it can add them to the dropdown. So we'll also pass a list of courses as a variable called also courses. So in our view, we can use this courses variable, we can add a loop, and we can populate the list of courses into the dropdown that we're going to add. So here's our revised project add. We're still doing what we were doing before, but we're also using the course model to go and fetch the list of courses so that we can put them in our drop-down list. So we've modified our controller. We also now need to modify the project add view. Because our third input, it's still a regular text input. We need to convert it to a select tag and then use some HBS syntax to display each course. So once we've added the query into our get method, we want to go to projects, to views, projects, add. This is the form we built last week. And I'm going to make a couple changes on line 14. I want to convert this input tag into a select tag. I'm going to remove the required attribute and add a separate closing tag. So it now looks like this. If I save and go back to my browser now, we should see an empty drop-down list for course. So if I refresh, we now have a drop-down, but it's empty. So we need to use a simple loop structure in Handlebars syntax to display each course as an option inside the dropdown. So our syntax is fairly simple. In Handlebars, instead of for each like we've used in PHP or like we used in ASP.NET views, we just use a $each. So we are using each for each one of our courses that we're passing in from the controller. So for each one of these, we're creating an option with this dot course code. And we end our loop this way with a /each. So this should give us a drop-down list that shows all the course codes. So now we get all the courses showing up in the drop-down. So I'll try this. Pick a course. Try and save a new project. I want to make sure the course code gets saved. So when I do, it now saves. The one last change we want to make to this is we maybe want to sort our courses. Right now, our drop-down list shows up, but it just shows up in the order we added the documents to the database. So it's chronological, it's not alphabetical. So we can add this sorting down here in our find. So all this code runs so after we call .find down here, we can add .sort by course code, and one would be in ascending order. So I'm going to add that after this second last round bracket. So now our list sorts in alphabetical order. 2083 is first, 2109 is last. Does anybody have any questions about our drop-down? So all of that work I had you do in the breakout rooms, that was just so that we could get this list to be a drop-down. But it was also a chance for you to practice with models, views, and controllers in a mean stack app. I will push this again. So I'll just re-upload in case you need to reference anything that we've done around the drop-down. So now we want to come back here to our index. There's a few things I'd like to do. Number one, I want to format the due date so that it just shows as a date. We don't want to show this. Then we want to add delete functionality here. And then we can start to work on edit update. We may finish that today. We might not. That's okay. So let's open up our project index view. So under views, projects, and index. I think if we do a dot too short date, I'm going to try this. Bear with me for a second. I have to think about how I want to do it. Okay, I will check my notes and come back to it. I thought we could do it right here. Okay, I'll come back to the date formatting after. We do want to add in here delete links. So we'll do it as a standard link, and then we can style it with Bootstrap as a red button. So this is going to go to courses/delete. And then we're going to append on the underscore ID property. So we can just inject this right into our string, and it's not ID. Notice there's an underscore. This is the unique identifier that MongoDB automatically gives every document. And maybe I'll give it a class of BTN danger so we get a red button. We'll try this. It's going to call /courses/delete, and then as a parameter, we'll use the ID, the underscore ID. We'll see how this goes. So it's line 16 on my screen that's new. Okay, so I get delete buttons. When I click, I get a 404, but you can see how it passes in the unique ID. Much the way the .NET scaffolding would do. I maybe want to add another TH up here. Say actions. And we should also add a little confirmation to this. In case the user clicks the wrong thing, they're on a mobile device, they accidentally tap on the wrong delete button, or they don't mean to tap the delete button at all. They're just trying to touch their screen. They accidentally touch the button. So we should use a little bit of JavaScript, client-side JavaScript, to pop up a confirmation message. So rather than going here directly, we first want a JavaScript pop-up that says, are you sure you want to delete this, with an OK button and a cancel button. So I'm going to go to my project, and under public and JavaScript, we're going to make a simple client-side JavaScript file. So I'm just going to right-click the folder and choose new JavaScript file. I'm going to call this scripts. You can give it any name you like. Name is not really important. So this will be our delete confirmation. We'll call this function, are you sure? So we're going to use the JavaScript confirm message. So here's our really simple function. It calls the confirm method, brings up a little Moda window. It looks like an alert, but there's not only an OK button, there's a cancel button. When the user clicks OK, confirm returns true. When the user clicks cancel, confirm returns false. So we now need to add this script library. We could add it to just our form, but because we might write other client-side JavaScripts, might make sense to link this file into our layout. Yeah, Maggie, that's what I was thinking. Then it's available globally. So let's add the script file, and again, it's under public and JavaScript. We'll go to the layout. So our source, so our path to the public, and Maggie, this may have had something to do with some of the CSS or image issues you had in your project. It always just starts with a leading slash. That takes us right to the public folder. So we don't actually specify the public folder in the path. I know WebStorm says it doesn't see it. That's okay. At runtime, our app.js knows all static files are inside of public. So this is why we don't have to specify public in these paths. So we've added that script link to the layout file. And then if we go back to the index method, I'm going to add a click event listener on our button. So maybe make this a bit more readable. So on click equals are you sure? Whoops. It equals we want to return. We need to evaluate the result of are you sure? Does it return true because the user clicked OK? Or does it return false because the user clicked cancel? So here's our delete button. It should now include a confirmation message. We'll test it out. So if I click cancel, nothing happens. And if I click delete, my link then takes me off to courses/delete, and it passes in an ID number. So the last thing we want to do here, and we could do this quickly and then we'll take a break, is we need to write a get handler for the URL /delete. And there should also be an ID parameter here. And then we want to use our project model to connect to MongoDB and delete the selected document. Whoops. One problem with my URL. Sorry, this shouldn't be courses delete. This should be projects delete. My apologies. We're not deleting any courses. We want to be able to delete a project. So make sure you update that the href tag, it's not linking to courses, it's linking to projects. So we need to write the controller method called delete. We don't even need a delete view. We can just call the method and redirect back to index when we're done. So go back to the projects controller. And after our last method, our post method, we're going to write a new get handler. So here's our URL. It's /delete. And then much like in PHP, if you remember, we use the colon to denote a parameter. So this ID, it's not a literal. This is a placeholder value. And it will be represent the MongoDB object ID. And then our usual request response next. So we want to use the project model to delete the selected document. So our Mongoose model, our project model, it has built-in methods, just like it had a built-in create method. And it has a built-in find method. It has a remove method. So we'll call project.remove. And then we pass in as a JSON object the ID. So it's _ID. And we get that from our request parameters. So we're reading this parameter from the URL. And we pass that. It's like a where clause in an SQL query. And then we will check if we got an error. If we got an error, we'll log it. Otherwise, we will redirect back to the main take the user back to the project index. So this should delete and just bring the user back to the root path that will requery the database and refresh our project's index view. So here's our delete method. I'm going to save it and try it out. So I've got, I click delete and cancel, nothing happens. Now if I click delete and say OK, whoops, still took me to courses. I think I didn't save my change. Right, I didn't save my change here. Should have paid attention. So now it's taking me to project/delete with the ID number as a parameter. When I say OK, just sort of disappears from the page. Maybe the page flashes for a minute while it reloads, but it's running locally, so it's pretty fast. Okay, so here again is our delete. We get a GET request at this URL, and we use our Mongoose model. We call remove, pass in the document ID we want to remove, and if it works, we just reload our project index. So we've done create, we've done read, now we've done delete. The last thing we want to do with this is also add the ability to edit a project. So we could make these links, for example, have them load an edit view that's populated where we could then make changes to the project. So that's what we'd like to do. And if we've got time, we'll clean up this date format. I'll take a look over the break. I will push again. Are there any questions from anybody before we have a break? All right, so why don't we take a break here? When we come back, we're going to need to create an edit view, and then we're going to need two more methods in our projects controller. An edit get to display the form, and an edit post that will process an update on an existing project document. So I'm going to step away, go strum my guitar for 10 minutes, badly, I might add, and 12 minutes, we'll come back at 2 o'clock. I have uploaded everything that we've worked on so far.